I'm going to have them introduce themselves. I'm joined with two experts here in hospitality and even specifically in hotel spaces in different ways. Bill, I'm going to start with you. Bill Lilly, introduce yourself and talk about what you do.
Sure. Appreciate it. It's nice to be with you all. My name is Bill Lally. I own a company called Mode Green that specializes about 99% focused in the ultra luxury hospitality market, specific to controls and audiovisual systems. So we are suppliers for many of the major brands of controls that you recognize, the Crestron Lutrons of the world, as well as a lot of the audiovisual systems that we work with. So we take the full gamut of design, integration, ongoing service, and so forth for a lot of the major hotel brands in the ultra luxury market. So this is certainly something that's very close to us.
Well, good. I'm excited to have you on board and that you're a perfect person for this. Jordan, do you mind introducing yourself? Oh, did we just lose Jordan? That was interesting. Like literally the moment I was introducing him. Bill, I'm going to start with you then. I'm going to ask you a question that's off script a little bit. We're going to wait and get Jordan back here. Our producer's scrambling to figure out what happened. I think he must have clicked the wrong button. But listen, Bill, I'm curious, are the hotels recognizing this opportunity, and are they actively calling you to transform their lobby and even, I would say, meeting spaces? Because I have seen since the pandemic significant reduction of use of meeting spaces. The data is clear. Are they calling you to convert it into co-working spaces or hip, cool hangout spaces? Is this even a thing?
I'd say more the latter. Yeah, I think we've seen a pretty big evolvement over the last couple of years. I think just hotel AV in general has made massive transformations, where it used to be sort of just the side project of the IT consultant to go, hey, throw some speakers in the lobby. You're doing all the IT for the building, and to most of the outside world, AV and IT are the same thing. So hey, go throw some ceiling speakers in here, and we'll call that our technology plan. I think within the last several years, that's changed drastically, where the hotels have figured out that so much of their lobby experience, once it's the arrival, it's the first impression of any guests coming in. And they're really concentrating heavily on what that means from a branding standpoint and an experience standpoint as the guests are coming into their hotels for the first time, or maybe for repeat guests that like the brand. So we're seeing them evolve tremendously into, and a lot of it is market dependent, obviously, but really sort of clubby, loungy spaces and an ability. So that it's not just the bar, just the lobby space that you check in and get your key. They're turning them into places like you mentioned. Moxie's one of them. We're looking at a lot more where the sound systems are being beefed up. They're providing input plates for bands or for DJs and things like that. So they're really trying to make that a usable space is much more than just a transient space to have people check in and go to their rooms. They're trying to sort of reconnect that social aspect to it as well. So I think definitely the opportunity is there, and we're seeing those brands take advantage of those spaces as opposed to this being pass-through spaces, as I mentioned earlier. And I think you're going to find people picking where they stay based on that factor. I think, a lot of people don't want to be alone when they travel. I mean, I'm definitely I like to order room service and eat in my room by myself more than anyone I know. But ultimately, when I'm working, I want good lighting, and I want a space that looks like it's interesting to look at, not something boring. Jordan is back on. Jordan, don't touch anything because you're working right now. You good?
I am. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah. We can hear you great. You sound good. Okay. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Jordan Mendoza. I work for Electrosonic. I'm a design consultant. My specialty, my niche is hospitality spaces. And Billy, I apologize. It kicked me off right as soon as you were going into your explanation of what your specialty is. But I've worked in the industry for a little over 10 years now, mostly in Vegas. I do a lot of Vegas. So hospitality and Vegas hospitality is more my specialty. And
and that's a different kind of hospitality we're going to talk about.
It's a beast.
We should definitely have a session on hotel Wi-Fi, and we're going to have you kick it off next time. But outside of that, we're gonna come back and what's awesome is I kind of made some notes here and pre-wrote some questions, and I want to make sure that I have a chance to ask. So I'm going to ask them kind of this. I'm going to ask one at a time to make sure that I cover all the things I wanted to have covered, because it's not often we get this. And by the way, for an integrator, this is a great opportunity. This is a great opportunity for you to learn from some experts, but also for you to explore how you might approach these different hotel chains or even local hotels. And a lot of these chains, by the way, are owned by small franchisees that have bought multiple small hotels in that local area. So don't assume that you have to go directly to Marriott to actually do installs in Marriotts. Most Marriotts are franchised. So the first question I have is, not that long ago, it was considered a luxury to have a 2x2 video wall running in some really simple content in a hotel. How has digital signage evolved in the last few years? I'm going to start with you, Jordan, because in Vegas, there's probably no place in the world that has more digital signage than Vegas.
And I would absolutely agree with that. And when it comes to the digital signage world, that digital signage is going to be key for bringing your guests in, right? And promoting, like as the last session, as the last discussion was, your brand and kind of what you want to show and present as far as it goes. And you're right, 2x2 video wall was a luxury. Now, the first one that comes to mind is the MGM Grand lobby entrance, where they used to have, I think it started with CRTs back in the day, and then it moved to 3x3 video walls, and now it's a 10.5 foot by 64 foot video wall that they utilize content and digital signage in that aspect to bring in their specials, their restaurants, and also, hey, it's pool season, go get your cabana sort of situation. So that's one way that I feel like lobbies and casinos are utilizing that space as soon as the guest gets there.
And Bill, as being a luxury person, focused on the luxury side of the market, I would assume, because one of the questions that was asked at the last panel, they really couldn't answer, but I feel like you can answer this. I would assume that one of the great opportunities is using AI to actually personalize these messages to up the ante a little bit, so that when somebody's coming into a hotel space and they're being welcomed in a lobby space, they're getting a personalized welcome. And it can be done without broadcasting it to everyone. If you've ever been to the Delta terminal in Detroit, where they have that big video wall that customized messages that only you can see. I'm curious if you're getting if you're getting some call for some of this personalization using the digital signage that's already there.
Yeah, in some ways, I think it's still a little bit preliminary for that sort of thing. I always think of Minority Report, the movie, when that comes up about targeted messages and things like that. But what we are seeing is tailored artwork specific to that. So where I think tech has always been seen as ugly in a lot of ways, especially with the interior design world and that sort of thing. And that's evolving quite a bit, where even speaker systems are getting much smaller and much more high performance, or we're able to faux them in different ways, or whatever it might mean. And displays are doing the same, where it's not just this ugly TV on a wall. With direct-view LED or with the various tech that's out there now, these solutions can be adapted for a lot of other things. And what we're seeing now is, instead of it just being a static television on a wall, it's being seen more as a piece of art, where that can be dynamically changed and evolved, or sold for advertising for that matter, or for a special event through the rental and staging companies, where it can be a custom tailored experience for a client. A lot of it comes down to what's going to generate revenue, right? So at the same time, with dynamic artwork, I think even digital art was seen as pretty hokey or cheesy in the past, and that's evolving tremendously too. We work quite closely with a company called the Art Republic that goes literally around the world and finds digital artists and is bringing bespoke artwork into these spaces, and so that can be dynamically changed, and the hotel's not stuck with, well, they bought the artwork once through their purchasing agent and they're stuck with it for the next 10 years. It can be dynamically changed as much as they want to. So I think to your point, and I was on the previous just listening in, and wayfinding and all these sorts of things can be very targeted for, I think the sales and marketing opportunities for the sales, marketing, and food and beverage teams is a huge opportunity to take advantage of those spaces. And again, if we're able to incorporate that within design and make sure that we're very closely working with the interior design team, even lighting designers, so we're not getting light spillover on these displays, things like that. They really become part of the landscape, as opposed to just sort of an ugly necessity that's got some reader port outside of a ballroom, for example. So doing these designs intelligently and modeling them correctly is certainly changing the landscape of how they're used.
Well, Jordan disappeared again, but I think he's going to come back. I was going to ask him about I wonder if he did the Cosmo lobby, the Cosmopolitan Hotel lobby, because it's doing exactly what you're talking about. It has these column pillars that uses a combination of LCD and LED that is used for artwork, but is also used for signage. It is also used for wayfinding, and is also used for food and beverage. And they've done a really good job there. So I think that's a good example of that. Well, let me move on to my second question. Lobbies used to be simple, and the waiting area was just there to wait in line to check in. Now we're seeing that functionality expand. Even in event spaces, where we're, instead of having waiting areas that are just boring, where you're just standing in line, we're actually entertaining people with content, but also informing them with everything from signage to artwork, and even some gamification. What types of technologies need to be incorporated into lobbies to make these spaces more multi-purpose? Like obviously we know the basics, right? We obviously need a display, but I'm curious, since you're an expert in control, for example, how can that help? Are we going to count on automation, or are we going to have a touch panel everywhere, or what would you suggest?
So it's back of house touch panel sort of things. And what we're seeing primarily is flexibility within IP, either AV or video over IP. Either audio or video over IP communications. So that we're creating much more flexible spaces. So one of the difficult things in the hotel world is how much infrastructure do you actually put in? So if we're doing a ballroom, for example, we don't want projectors rolling in on carts. We don't want that sort of thing. But at the same time, you've got a space that's designed to be flexible, and it's going to be for a wedding. It might be for a conference, for Microsoft. Like, all these different functions need to happen in there. So putting in installed infrastructure, other than very obvious layouts, becomes difficult because it's a big investment for the hotel during construction. And it may not be used that often because they all have their partnerships with rental and staging companies that are going to come in and set up for special events and so forth. And therefore, what the turn that we're seeing is a lot more flexibility within Dante networks, for example, or say a Crestron NVX network or something like that, where we're able to transmit video over the network and we don't have cables taped across the floor. We're giving them various pathways to be able to have all the infrastructure to use that space as flexible as possible, and host whatever events they might want to, without overspending on the actual hard assets that are going in there for screens and projectors and that sort of thing. So yes, in some cases they're obviously needed because we don't want, like I said, rolling carts coming in, but we're also just trying to design a lot of infrastructure into those spaces to give them the flexibility to be connecting around that room without, like I said, taping cables and things across the floors.
Hey, Jordan, right before you popped off, I was going to ask you the question about the Cosmopolitan Hotel in Vegas, because that is a good example of artwork and signage married together. All those columns as you walk through that lobby area where you check in. Did you do that project? Or are you familiar with that project?
I am familiar with that project, and I did not do that. They did do a refresh recently with content that I kind of helped speak into a little bit, but I didn't really do a whole lot with it. It's kind of a spatial sound element along with the columns and the different changing content on those columns. It's quite impressive, and they produced the film production behind it was a huge, big ordeal. That's why their content looks so good. So I really appreciate them putting that money and that time into that, to making that lobby such a spectacle. It's really awesome.
and I'm gonna ask you similarly on the last question, since you disappeared when I asked it. What are, give me top 2 or 3 new technologies you're seeing put into lobbies in hotels that people are asking for, or that integrators can embrace?
You know, it is a digital signage aspect, as you asked, as you mentioned, and a lot of hotels are just starting to catch up and putting those items in for digital signage, and even lower pixel or larger pixel, I guess I could say, ambient lighting, so that way they can make that space really pretty and really use content to drive the feeling and the kind of the emotion of the space. Is what I see a lot of what they are doing. And really that's probably the main thing that I see going on. And whether it's larger format pixels or smaller pixels in like a container of some sort, I won't get too much onto that because there's a lot of projects going on right now with these things. But just really using LED, using content to light the space rather than use it as digital signage itself. Yeah,
actually I stayed at Marriott in Marco Island, where that's exactly what they were using the LED for, was to light the space. Even though it was a full-on LED, they were using it to generate color, and through color you can generate emotions, right? You can make people more excited, you can make them tired, right? You can make them know it's nighttime versus daytime, and you can even influence them to spend more money if you do it right. So that's an opportunity. So accessibility is an issue that every space is having to deal with, especially hospitality spaces. And this whole idea of including everyone and not just ad hocing it at the end has been pervasive in our industry, and we've solved a lot of those problems with technology. How can technology be leveraged to create more accessibility and welcoming spaces for hotel lobbies? What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's really creating the awareness of what you want people to be involved in. So that you can showcase your property, you can showcase your workers, you can showcase the people that kind of make that place run, build that place really. And in doing so, you include those that you normally wouldn't see or normally wouldn't really pay attention to, or maybe there's just a specific area, or let's say you're in Vegas and you go to Bellagio. There's an installation in the gallery that you want people to go see, and maybe it's a heritage of I'm on Hawaii, so maybe like the Hawaiian heritage, something like that, to create that inclusive awareness in your space so people actually.
So you're saying use artwork potentially, or even museum like content to draw people in, because if they come there and see the space, maybe they're willing to try it out, maybe they're willing to put their family there, but also maybe they're willing to sponsor an event there, or be part of an event there, because they would not have normally gone. That's an interesting way. That's an interesting thought, because we look at hotels as just spaces that we can transform to anything, but in a lot of cases, the space has already been transformed, built into something that you don't want to change, right? It's just a beautiful space, and you want to take advantage of that beautiful space and use it for a reason. Same question to you. Have you run into this with hotels where they're having to re-engineer spaces, or have you had the opportunity to start from scratch with this kind of an issue?
I read this question a bit differently with accessibility, more in compliance with ADA and things like that.
Yes, agreed.
Where, we are seeing that quite a bit. And I think we actually did a hotel in West Virginia, of all places, that was 100% dedicated, where the entire building was designed to be accessible, it was a small boutique hotel, but it was a really cool concept, because it was sort of where guest rooms, more specifically, there's obviously the ADA guest rooms that are compliant with the things that you'd see with grab rails and doorbell systems and things like that you may not see in your guest room, that are sort of the intent of the hotel in West Virginia was to not have that be an outstanding or call to attention to someone that might be having to stay in a disabled room. They wanted the full building to be accessible. And so it was kind of an interesting thing. And the whole project was really solved with controls, where it wasn't intended, we're only putting controls in either these luxury suites or in the ADA compliant rooms, but it was everywhere. So there wasn't anything done that was exceptional. There wasn't anything done that was different. It was all consistent across the board. So I think we're seeing that quite a bit. We're working on a project in New York right now where even the exterior windows are automated, so that there's keypad buttons on the wall, and we have motorized controls in the windows. Those are specific to the ADA rooms, but to make sure that everyone can have the ability to open up their windows for fresh air, whatever that means in New York City, but that you can go and actually open those windows. And if you physically can't go and lift the window up, there's a button on the wall that you can hit, and it controls the motor through the control system to open those up. I think in the lobby spaces, specifically your question, it would be more related to wayfinding, and also making sure that we find redundancy is extremely important in AV and control tech design in general for hospitality. We want to have multiple ways to do anything. And so if there's something that might be suited for one person, and I don't think from an accessibility standpoint, it necessarily even is like an ADA compliance thing, but it really even comes down to demographics and somebody's ability to use tech or choose to use tech or not, where we always, even in design, want to make sure that there's multiple ways to do things, so that you might want to have an iPad in your room that you can adjust temperature from, but you may not want that. You may just want to go up and hit the buttons on the wall. So we really try to look at it from all sides and all demographics. And it's not, like I said, it's not necessarily age related. There's plenty of tech savvy people that would be considered quote unquote older. And there's plenty of people that are younger that don't want anything to do with it because they want to simplify their lives. And that's totally cool too. So I think we're playing against all of that. And the lobby spaces specifically, again, it really comes down to making sure that those designs are redundant, and whatever the offerings are in those spaces, they are accessible to all, or if there's wayfinding solutions or things like that, that they're obvious and easy to read at all, at various heights and things like that, so that there isn't any exclusions based on what those designs are calling for.
Yeah, and you alluded to the air quality in New York. I'm quite sure the air quality where Jordan is much better than in New York today. I'm going to throw this question out to both of you. And see who wants to take it. With the rise of mobile apps and AI-driven assistance, which is interesting because AI-driven assistance is like, amped up all of a sudden as of 2 days ago. How do hotels strike a balance between automation and maintaining the human touch and guest interactions? Because there's a lot of times I actually like checking into a hotel without actually going to the front desk. I love that experience of the mobile key walking right into my room. But I know my parents hate it. And I know a lot of other people don't like it. So you're kind of striking a balance. Now with AI and the ability to have your assistant do that work for you, like literally, I actually saw a demo this morning on Instagram where someone said, hey, to their assistant using the new OpenAI 4.0, call the Marriott and check me in and make sure have my room available at 2 p.m. And it did it, right? I mean, I'm curious where that balance is going to be. And have any of you experienced any of this yet? Any of this use of AI?
Billy, I'll let you go up.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we have, certainly. I think it's sort of a continuation of what I was talking about previously. I didn't want to jump ahead because I knew that question was coming, but it is really a matter of how, again, it comes back to me for redundancy in multiple ways to do things. And so, to that same point, some people are going to want that high touch environment. Some people want nothing to do with it. And I think we collectively all work in technology, and we are going to be the subset that's going to go, yeah, I don't want to talk to a person. I want to grab my key off my phone. I'm going to go BLE my door and be in and on my way. And we can streamline that whole process. I think hotels are struggling with that because they've always prided themselves on this high touch environment. We do quite a bit of work with Forbes Travel Guide over the last several years, and they have always been the de facto standard of hotel ratings and really defined what luxury sense is. And they've redefined their standards over the course of the last several years as well to modify and take into account some of these things that we're seeing in the industry with regards to technology. And I think people are going to gravitate to the brands that they prefer that experience to. There's going to be the people that, like, I mean, I'll use St. Regis as an example of a very high touch environment. The bellman's still going to meet you at the door. He's still going to help you with your bags, or she. And they're going to, come inside, take you to your room, introduce you to your room, give you the whole rundown of everything that's going on. And there's people that are going to always want that. And there's other people that want nothing to do with that. And I think they're going to gravitate, and that's where their brand allegiances are going to come into play, decide, well, I don't want to deal with all that. I don't want to have to tip 7 people on the way to my door to go, just to walk inside the building, versus there are plenty of people that do want that. And that's the experience. And I think it even comes down to, some of the AI, AR questions from the previous session is to hotels are places that you want to go to sort of escape your normal life. And so whatever that means to you, that's what you're going to gravitate towards, whether it's AI or AR experiences, or even, do I want to be greeted at the door by a bellman, or I just want to go into my room and escape everybody? So I think it really comes down to what are you looking for and what's that experience? And again, the brands are trying to define themselves in the same way. And I think that's going to be certainly one of the standards they define themselves by what is that experience they're offering, and who is the target set for their demographic customer.
Jordan, are you not seeing have any of your clients not asked for AI for signage content? Because there's a lot of applications out there. Corbett, for example, I've seen some really cool stuff from them where they're able to generate content automatically using AI for signage, which is great because it changes the content without a human having to interact with it, and it keeps the content up to date. Are you seeing that in a large way, in large format signage as well in Vegas?
In Vegas, I haven't seen a whole lot of AI generated content and that sort of interaction between guests. But I think right now we're still in the very beginning of utilizing that like AI and interactive space with guests, because not a lot of people get to witness that. I think Vegas is a great portion, a great space for it. But I think we do need more of that so that way people can get more involved, because some people are still very hesitant working with AI, AR, things like that. And very similar to what Billy was saying is that you have to know your client, because it's funny he mentioned about the high touch areas are like the St. Regis, the Four Seasons, places like that where your experience is lower technology but higher presence with your back and forth with your bellman, with your check-in situation. And I really don't see a lot of course we see digital room keys, we see digital check-in, we see just room keys, but also ordering your food without even talking to someone. And like for myself, I'm not a huge fan, because I feel like I want to call someone, place the order, and I want it done. Like, as much as I love technology, I love the personal touch. I love talking to a person. I love the opposite of what a lot of people are going towards, where they're trying to get AI to actually do all of that work for them. So that's kind of where I differentiate.
I love that. I love that ordering process, because it's almost always more accurate when I place an order electronically. And so to me, accuracy is more important than the human touch with that kind of an application. I think it's an interesting balance, and it's interesting that we're having to constantly move along that spectrum of balance. As technology rapidly evolves, what future-proof technology, what future-proof strategy, Bill, what are you telling your hotels? What are you saying? These are the two things, or this is the thing you have to do now, and this is the thing you need to be watching out for. Is there something like that you're pitching?
I think it's infrastructure and bandwidth. I on all the panels I speak on, I almost say the same thing on everyone with regards to this, in the sense of hotels were always historically a place where people came to see things they couldn't afford to have at home, where they would have the first run movies. So they'd go from the theaters to the hotels and airlines, and then they'd go to home video. There was always this experience that you just simply couldn't afford at home. And now that tide has completely changed for hotels. It's impossible for hotels to keep up with the amount of tech that people have in their houses. And just being able to keep enough infrastructure, enough bandwidth in place to support whatever the new thing is that's coming out tomorrow is important. A lot of them are, in my opinion, short-sighted on what they need for IT infrastructure. I think we've all had plenty. I think you mentioned earlier, Gary, that Wi-Fi in hotels is always a struggle. It's not always, but it's a pretty blanket statement. But in a lot of cases, hotels struggle. And I think that they're not able to predict the amount of devices that people are actually bringing in with them, and what amount of content is being streamed, and all the requirements that are coming in. So making those investments into that infrastructure is going to be without that, there's no foundation for them to build on any of this. So I think with that, and making these dynamic environments like we talked about earlier with digital signage, not getting locked into hard assets and figuring out how to make these spaces more dynamic, I think is really the way that they're going to have to be looking at this.
Jordan, I'm guessing you'll agree with that infrastructure issue, considering you've been disconnected twice on this call, but you're in Hawaii at a hotel. Sure. There's worse places to be disconnected. So we give you a pass, and you're still going to enjoy yourself. But what are you telling your clients now? What are some of the things they need to be doing to make their spaces future-proof?
That's great. And Billy was hitting it right on the head, bandwidth, but mostly infrastructure, because everybody, when we're designing, they always VE. They VE infrastructure. They're like, oh, well, we don't need this right now. But I'm like, well, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, this video wall is going to be a third, or like maybe even a quarter of the pixel pitch. It's going to be clear, but it's going to require a ridiculous amount of data. And that Cat 5, that Cat 6, that soon Cat 7 is not going to be able to hold that bandwidth. So you need to make sure that you can expand on top of that when you redo this environment. But and on top of that, making sure they understand to refresh their spaces. Because they want to say, oh, we'll have it for this long, they'll have it for 5 years. Like, you should refresh these places often to keep your clientele coming back. Give them an experience very similar to what Billy said earlier. People come to get things they can't see at home. Give them an experience they can't get at home. Give them the large format screen. Give them the amazing sound system that they are like, holy cow, this is amazing. Like, this is where I want to listen to music. This is a concert venue I want to come see someone at. That sort of thing is what you have to push for sometimes, especially in the design and planning process, to convince them not to cut back.
I love that. I think that's great advice, and I think that's advice that's not always listened to. Now, it's interesting to me. We've been talking about lobby spaces, and I feel like, Billy, tell me if I'm right or wrong, Jordan and Bill. I feel like we are closer to working together as lobbies are rebuilt, re-engineered, or built from scratch ahead of the construction phase than we were 10 years ago as AV companies. I feel like we're ahead of that, where we're not coming in at the end and going back and trying to solve for problems that the interior designer didn't foresee because of technology. And you can give me a simple yes or no. Bill, do you agree with that? Do you feel like we are coming in?
Yeah, like I said early on, I think AV was always sort of lumped into the IT consultants pie. Yeah. There was never a dedicated discipline. It wasn't anything more than some.
But now it is.
Now it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and Jordan?
Yeah, I feel building a good relationship with your interior designer, especially in the earlier design phase and the concept phase, is huge. And I find that that is one of the biggest things that is a proponent to getting a good AV design and coordination. Because AV is starting to be the lifeline, the blood of those lobbies, as it should be, right? That's how I feel.
Well, I just gave Steph the best setup ever, because here's how I'm going to set this up. Like, she doesn't even know this is coming. You guys didn't know this was coming. Alternatively, ballroom spaces are not part of the initial upfront work that interior designers do with AV companies. They could care less, for the most part, what an AV company wants to do. And we are constantly trying to figure out how to project around a giant chandelier or not touch something that they told us we're not allowed to touch while still putting in all this technology. So even though hotels have said with the lobby spaces, we need to make sure we're working up front. That example of Cosmopolitan is a great example because the content is driving the experience there, right? But in ballroom spaces, it's definitely not the case. In ballroom spaces, we're coming in and trying to make something happen in a space that they designed to never be used for anything other than tables with white linen cloths and people sitting there eating lunch. And so therefore, that was the greatest setup for Steph Beckett in this next session. Am I right, Steph? What do you think? Did I set you up really well? Yeah, just give me a yay or a nay up there, Steph. She's giving me a thumbs up. So hopefully it's going to pop up on the screen.